You look at that piece of land, and you imagine how many pieces of houses are going to go up, and the value that just that piece of land has accrued in a number of decades or hundreds of years, right? So land, as we all know, can make you exceptionally wealthy because land is finite. But we know that as these years progress, the laws say, okay, guys, the majority of people in the country, you cannot own this thing. The base of capital in a capitalist society, you can't own it. And so on and so forth. The next thing, skills restriction. You can't have those kind of skills, and you will have an inferior education. A lot of people are wondering, 30% pass rate every year, nye, nye, nye. Well, hell, these kids are being taught by people who were taught by people who were taught by people who got bunch of education. It's like the compounding interest of poor education. What the hell do you think is going to happen? You know? And we're all like, oh man, like, damn, why are the Zimbabweans getting all the jobs in finance? Because those guys didn't, their great-grandfathers didn't have punch education. They can do numbers. I mean, we laugh, but that's some of the theory that was put into the system. So if you look at it, what was perfected over a number of years. Remember, I told you the very first law we see is called the Masters and Servants Law. It's in 1825. 1825. By 1925, that's been 100 years of these kind of laws. It means by the time we get to now, 2025, you know, it would have been nearly 200 years. Everybody's like, 20 years, it's over. I don't know, eh? It's like 150 years of a very well-crafted, and you know, they kept refining it. If you go through the laws, you'll see that they did, unintended consequence. Oh, this one got out. Okay, let's change this thing again. The most important thing, however, you must remember was it kept people out, right? It kept people out of the system. And anyone who was in the system was also felt like, no. It's your privilege, right? And actually, there's nothing wrong. As you move on, there's some law. It's called, what's the law called? Oh, the Rioters Act. And the law basically says if anybody writes or says anything that causes hostilities between races, they can get thrown in jail. Which means if I was to say everything I'm saying now, back then, I would get thrown in jail. Because someone here might feel, I don't like white people now. Then they'd be like, oh, Shaka, let's go. Which means that even white people couldn't tell white people what was going on. This was the system. But inherently, what drove this system was a capitalist agenda. It was as much an economic system as a human rights system. The real human rights horrors only start from the 50s onwards. Before that, it's all economic. It's all about dispossession, and it's all about keeping people, molding them to be in a particular way. That's what it's about. So, now, 20 years later, we have our freedom. What's it worth? People didn't have a lot of money to save. But they also didn't save in banks because they didn't have access to financial facilities. They saved in each other. They did stokvels. There's about 50 billion rand every year sitting in stokvels. Right? This is something that all of us as entrepreneurs should know. Because when the taxi guy wants to go and buy a taxi, do you think he goes and pays cash? Do you think he goes and does lay-by? Do you think that this guy goes and gets a credit from West Bank, goes to that stokvel market? So that's something we should definitely know. All right. Now, The interesting thing about freedom, as we've experienced it lately, is we have the freedom to talk, say what we want. We have the freedom to buy things. It's been incredible, right? Like we've been buying things, got TVs, PlayStations, and lately we even have the freedom to be individuals. I think started around the time that BE guys started wearing like different floral colored shirts. You go to meetings and you see all the black guys looking like peacocks. It's crazy. Like all the white guys who got real money, like black tie, just boom. Okay, big guy, bright, purple. On a young Tuesday morning. Orange shirts, I've seen this. But it's very interesting because there was a time when as a black person you couldn't be different from the pack. You couldn't be different from the herd, right? Like you couldn't be a skater boy. Be like, you couldn't be into basketball. I see most dates. Yeah, people are laughing because they've heard that. There were those kids getting picked on in the hood. You were there with your Jordans. Everybody else has got all stars. And now we have the freedom. We have the freedom to date, associate with who we want. We even have the freedom of experiences. Now, about 2 years ago, I had one of the most life-changing experiences, and I would recommend this one for every one of you. There's a dude here, KK, that has shared this experience with me, but at a different time. And it's the experience of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. When you get to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, it's exactly what every movie, what every cartoon tells you heaven looks like. It's all bright light for as far as the eye can see. The light's just like it's bright, it bounces off the snow, everything is white all around. It just feels pure, and all you see in the distance is clouds. It's like you are literally in heaven. It's the most incredible thing. But to get there, goddamn. To get there is so strenuous on your body. And I was actually just reminiscing with KK now outside, and I was talking about how the night, because you have to leave at like 11 o'clock. You have to leave the last base camp at 11 o'clock at night and climb up and walk up the mountain. You're not really climbing. You're like, walk up this mountain. But there's so many other people who are doing it, and they all have, because it's late, like it's very dark, so you all have like headlamps here. So when you look up the mountain, all you see is like this snake of lights moving up, And it feels like we're all battalions on a secret mission. Because everyone's quiet as you shuffle along, and you have your bags, and it just like feels like, wow, we're on some secret mission. And I really felt like it was a secret mission because at some stage as I was walking, the woman in front of me just falls down, BAM! I'm like, oh damn, she's been shot. And we get to the top, and it's great, and it's amazing, and I prayed, and I cried, and then I started coming down, and it's the worst feeling in the world because it's like sandy, so like as you walk, you're tired, and then your feet get stuck in the sand, and you just, oh man, it's crazy. I get down to the base camp, and I record this video of myself, and every time I look at it, I go, oh my God, I look like a crackhead. My lips are cracked, they're white, my eyes are bloodshot, my face is all cracked, and like I'm probably about like 50 Ks lighter than this, like in my face. It's crazy. I look like a crackhead, really. Like Chris Rock in like New Jack City. Looks bad. But as I get off, I start thinking, wow, I've done this thing. It's great. Yeah, I'm one of like 20, I think there's 200,000 people in the world that have climbed this mountain. Like, I'm like, yeah, one of 200,000, yeah. And as I walk, there's always a guy walking next to me, right? There's a porter. Now, the thing about these porters, There'd be like there's 4 porters for every one of us. And when we are going up this mountain, they take your bags. And they also take chairs. And they take tents. So every time you get to a base camp, they've set up your whole entire camp for you. There's a big tent there, there's tables, there's chairs, there's pots, there's food, there's your tents. And these guys are carrying this thing on their back and they wrap these things up in their backpacks and they carry it. So you are like, oh my God. Oh my God, we climbed today. Oh man, I feel so good. These guys are like, oh yeah, with big bags. As you're struggling, they'd be like, coming through. And it made me wonder, because this is a great achievement for me, but for these guys, it's a walk in the park. It's just a walk in the park. And then I also think about, but who are the guys that actually created the path? Because there's real pathways. There's wood, that's been put there, and there's paving. I think who put the paths all the way 5,000 kilometers in the air? Because there's a path. But when you're walking it, you don't think about it. When you're doing it, you don't think about it. You think, damn, it's so hard. And I always think on that moment when I think about freedom in a South African context. Because for many of us, the things we're grappling with, our oppression, it's so hard. It's so difficult. And then we don't even realize how hard it must have been for the guys that paved the way. I mean, if it's so hard for me to go without anything, imagine the guys that actually went up there with the rock and laid this thing, but you don't take notice of it when you're walking on it. That's how it feels. I don't take notice of the fact that an entire system has been abolished. A system that was constructed to make sure that I never, ever, ever, ever fulfill my potential. Ever. That no matter how great I am at anything, I will never reach that potential.